G'day everyone, I am a man called Kemosabe, the man with the plan from the land down under, and this is my first ever unboxing video. Never done one of these before. Normally I get my videos. Never done one of these before. Normally I get my comics sent through digital format, but in here is a copy of Xenotype by Liam Gray and Mangaka. And Liam says he strictly doesn't do digital, so he wanted a review of his book from me. So he very kindly decided to just send me a gratis copy express post to my house. Never really understood unboxing videos, but thought it's worth a try. People seem to enjoy them. I think it does get me this way that people take forever to get into the box. They talk about the packaging itself. I suppose it matters when you're unboxing action figures or toys or models or something. And we definitely want quality packaging on our comics, but I don't necessarily think that we need to spend a lot of time talking about it like toy collectors do. People also seem to take a long time to get into the box. Oh, look at that. That is a thick boy. That's a thick boy with two C's. Look at that big boy. Look at that big lad. Look, that's bloody lovely, that is. Collector's edition. What size is that sumbitch? I hope he feels as much joy seeing this in his hands, seeing his name on the credits as he deserves, and I hope I manage to have that much joy when it's my turn. So you see, you got that reflective gold in the eyes and on the credits there. Yeah, lovely. Let's crack this bad boy open. Now, Liam mentioned to me that the copy that he sent through was one that's laid out. I believe the implication was it's laid out like a regular comic book. It's not laid out like a manga, because I have expressed in the past that I do struggle to read the way that mangas are set out. For high school students, Felix Vasquez, everything changes the day an unnatural storm settles over Fernwood City. Brought to the brink of death by a vicious predator, Felix awakens with mysterious psychic powers and the ability to rewrite his own DNA, transforming him from a mild-mannered artist into the hero Esper. Confronted with the sobering reality that everything in his world, including his past, may be a lie, Felix discovers only one thing is for certain. Esper alone has the power to fight back against the evils of the sinister Black Diamond conspiracy. Follow Felix as he faces monsters, madness, and mayhem in this fierce fighting franchise. Now, if you know me, there's one thing you might know that I really like, and that is some good alliteration. That's some fantastic alliteration. And I think Black Diamond sounds really sinister and insidious. I think it's a great name for a villainous organisation. Just going to move this knife out of the way so I don't get shanked by my own kids. Yeah, that looks great. Oh, it's got that fantastic prestige new comic book smell. Excuse me while I kiss the sky. Oh, that is lovely. I don't know what sort of chemicals they use in the printing process, but giddy off that. Yep, this is a fantastic bit of kit. I will read it and be back shortly with a review. It definitely reads left to right, so I don't think I'll have any problem understanding it. It looks fantastic. It's like 200 pages, I think. Heaps of violence, action, character development. It's got clearly a lot of those anime manga conventions that I'm aware of, if not well versed in. So it'll be interesting to see how that sort of translates to me as someone who's primarily a reader of Western media. G'day everyone, I am the man called Kemosabe, the man with the plan from the land down under, and this is my review of Xenotype by Liam Gray and Mangaka. This book was funded and fulfilled on the Indiegogo platform, raising over $102,000 dues. There's 200 pages and came in a variety of editions and formats. I received the gold edition, so all comments I make will refer to that particular volume. I'm sidestepping the drama and the events surrounding the book. I review comics, not people. I don't know the whole story, and none of it's my bloody business anyway. People preach separate the art from the artist until they themselves can't do it. Then they want you to join in condemning someone who thinks or acts in a way they don't approve of. Like I said, I don't review people. So let's take a look at the book. In terms of form and function, this book is second to none. The paper quality, the binding, the cover, the printing clarity, the weight and presentation of the book are immaculate and of the highest quality. The gold imprint gives the whole thing a very professional, high-end feel. This is a deluxe, top-of-the-line collectible comic, and for the quality of the art and the size of the volume, it's a bargain. This book will have pride of place on your bookshelf and shames other professional comics by being more professional than they are. Odie's art is incredible. I don't know how rare or unconventional it is for a non-Japanese to be considered a mangaka, if that's a title one adopts or if it's given to you. His style definitely looks authentic Japanese. I fancy there's a slight European edge to it, but I also wonder if I didn't know that Odie was Greek, would I still think there was a European look to his work? I guess I should be upfront about something. I'm really not a fan of manga or anime. I'm definitely a live and let live sort of person, and I don't mind that people love manga, that it exists, or that it's smashing American comic books and sales. With the direct the US has been producing lately, they deserve this painful and expensive wake-up call. There are some anime that I love. Angel Cop, Guyver, Fist of the North Star. Mostly older stuff, the stuff that led the way of the ill-named 1990s manga invasion of the West. I've never read a manga all the way through. Maybe one issue of Berserk or something years ago on 4chan. The panelling and speech balloons are confusing to me, and simply reversing the orientation and order of the panels doesn't fix that. I could persevere with it, but I don't care to. I've heard it said that up until a certain age, all children draw people the same way. After a certain age, I believe it's 3 or 4 years old, they are influenced by the culture they live in, and the visual conventions of that culture affect the way that they draw. Culture shapes art, and there are cultural elements in manga and in turn anime that I will never fully understand, that I cannot separate from the medium. It's those elements, unnameable to me, and probably the reason weebs love the medium so much, that divorces me from it. In short, my dislike of manga originates from all things that make it manga. When people say manga is a replacement for my cape shit, I bristle against that because no, it isn't. Only cape shit can be cape shit. And no, it isn't just because manga lacks the cultural elements that make American comic books distinctly American comic books. My Hero Academia is not a substitute for a decent ongoing Spider-Man title, and it never will be. A superhero manga is not a replacement for a superhero comic book. It simply can't be. A manga is, in itself, too removed from American comics to ever truly replace them. And I mean replace them as in do the same job they do. Manga might one day replace American comics on shelves and in sales, but they will never do the specific, exact job they do. I don't like the culturally unique elements of manga that make it manga. I can't name them, but I can point to them and tell you that they are there. For me, they are vague amoeba concepts that I can describe but never define. So bear with me during this review. There might be a name for the type of expositionary narrative characters provide during a fight, the kind where they explain the motivations, origins and effects of the fighter's techniques, abilities and choices while the fight is occurring before them, usually to a clueless but enthusiastic third party. It's a common thing that happens in anime and manga. Almost every martial arts or superpowered or fighting manga has some version of this. You might have seen the memes with this sort of thing, as it happens in card battle anime, is applied to high stake games of Judo.
Ha! Looks like you won't be losing any more cards soon with this!
That card!
It's a draw 2 card. Once that card is placed down, it forces the next player to draw 2 more cards in their hand, gaining more cards and putting them at a disadvantage.
That kid, he knew what to do, and found the perfect opportunity to strike. Now this match is starting to get real interesting.
Just 2 cards left. If all goes well in the next few turns, then my victory is assured. All I need from him now is a card that matches its color or its number.
I'm not letting you go that easily, foolish boy. I want to see your cute face break into tears.
What?
Behold your demise! You lose a turn with this skip card! This is bad.
You know.
It fits perfectly. This is a thing, it's a convention of anime and manga. It's almost wholly unique to anime and manga. It is distinctly Japanese, and while I can't name it, if indeed it has a name, I can identify it and I can tell you that it's there. Odie's art, for example, has the trademarks of authentic-looking manga art. The faces are less stylized than the guy who draws Dragon Ball, and smoother than the guy who draws Berserk. There are only a few instances where a face or tone of the body doesn't quite sit right in the panel, but they are rare and never egregious, and I find Odie's style to be more solid and weighty than much of the black and white, fine-lined manga art that I have seen. It all has very realistic proportions, lacking the bulky bodybuilder physiques of American comics. Physiques that are giving way to yoga instructors and dad bods, not a trend that I support. And that's to be expected when so many of the cast are teenagers. Teen heroes, another anime trope I'm not a fan of. I find it hard to believe 13 and 16-year-olds can have the complexity of thought or maturity of emotion that adults enjoy. When literal children are fighting for these high stakes, universal battles to save the world, it pulls me from the story. I imagine the people who write these stories don't know many teenagers and write them like grizzled 40-year-old veterans. If you're going to write your 15-year-old protagonists like Colonel Quaritch, just make them a middle-aged soldier and be done with it. Why so many characters in anime and manga are so young is a discussion for another time, but I think it sits squarely between the age of the people the media is aimed at and a general desire to sexualize the characters and find them attractive. Odie is a young man, only just out of his teens, I believe. With continued guidance and experience, he has the potential to be a significant master of his craft. And as a foreigner, that would be a massive coup indeed. He is able to draw motion, combat, the superhuman and the mundane with equal skill. Page after page he amazes and impresses. Recently I've heard people repeat the idea that art matters more than the story in a comic. I prefer story, but the patrician ideal is, of course, a perfect marriage of the two. Even if Liam's story wasn't to your taste, one would not feel out of pocket for having paid for 200 pages of Odie's art. The art in the gold edition is coloured. I know a lot of manga is black and white or grayscale, but I haven't seen Odie's art in black and white for this title. I can't say how much the colour enhances the art, but as a standalone piece of media, as comic book sequential art, the Spartan Scotsman has created a colourful, bold, high-impact style to accompany Odie's amazing art. It is high contrast with lots of clean white backgrounds that allow the figures, the superhuman energy and the blood, and there is lots of it, to sit in stark relief on the page. I haven't seen Scotsman's work on other titles, but if it's greatly different and he has managed to bend his skills to suit this manga style, that's an impressive achievement. Last year I reviewed Odie and Liam's other comic, X-Road Strive, very favourably. It was the first comic I reviewed where I had to go without my traditional good, bad and ugly structure because there was simply nothing bad about the book. I had nothing negative to say, nothing at all. Two Westerners made a manga about making a manga to prove they could make a manga as good as the Japanese. It was meta, it was fun, it was a very clever way to make their point, and it was a respectful shots fired to the manga community. When people invoke the classic beats of superhero tales, the unlucky in love hero, the man pipped at the post by his own alter ego, the awkward exit to save the world or at least the city, the gaudy themed supervillains and needlessly complex schemes, and the countless thwarted bank robbers, they are hailed as classic storytellers who are conserving stalwart visuals and stories, up to 90 years in the making. When Liam did the same thing for manga in X-Road Strive, he was attacked as reductive and derivative. While reading Xenotype, I found a strange phenomenon was in effect, the same one I experienced while reading X-Road Strive. Though I don't consider myself any sort of expert on anime and manga, in fact I'd consider myself not even a layman, I saw example after example of manga storytelling cues and tropes, and I'm not using tropes as a pejorative. The story of Xenotype is so classically manga, so obviously anime, that it can't help but please any pundits of those media. There are so many beats, so many conventions and elements that you are familiar with that the whole book reads like something between a primer and a love letter for the medium. The story is set on Orm, an Earth-like world. While the beings that inhabit the planet are, I suppose, aliens to us, unless the book is set in the future and they are the distant descendants of Earthlings, they are largely, visually and anatomically human. They look, speak and act just like human men and women. They live in apartments and houses, they have families, mothers and siblings. They attend high school and catch the bus to get there. The main character, Felix, draws superhero designs on a sketch pad and crushes on the pretty blonde girl in his class. In fact, if it wasn't for the glossary in the back, I could have been forgiven for having missed that the whole story is set on an alien world inhabited by an alien humanoid species. It's not mentioned significantly in the main book that I could see, and it has no real bearing on the story within this particular volume. Knowing the way Liam writes, the way he sets up plot and story beats far in advance, I have no doubt this will come into play and will be significant. But with it having so little immediate impact here, I wonder if he wouldn't have been better off keeping that reveal for later. Imagine if, another 200 pages in, the main characters are shaken by the revelation that they aren't even on Earth, they aren't even human. That would be a huge narrative reveal. The opening of the book is pleasantly familiar, like a song by your favourite band that you somehow never heard before. It's new, but you already know it. Mirroring about half of all comics, movies, and books that ever existed or will exist, the book opens with a chase scene. A gormless teenager, Tanner, is being chased down an alley by a hulking, glowing, multi-eyed demon that kills him for being witness to the demon's existence. Liam starts us in media res. We don't know how Tanner saw the monster or why the monster is so intent on keeping its existence a secret. These are all questions we start asking ourselves even as the first scene resolves. The monster emerges from the darkness, having taken on the form of a man. Like a werewolf, this beast hides amongst the sheep that it preys upon. We next meet Felix, the protagonist of the story. I'm not a fan of the sort of expositionary, explanative narrative that comes next in any comic book format, not in manga and not in Marvel or DC comics, but it is the quickest way to give us the information we need. Felix is a high school student who lives with his large family and likes to draw, with dreams of becoming a cartoonist. On his sketchpad we see something that resembles a Xenotype armor, foreshadowing what he will become by the book's end. Now, I would have advised Liam to engage in some show, not tell here, but he does cleverly use the expositionary dialogue to move us to where he wanted us, where he wants the readers to be. We see Felix as a great big brother, supporting, helping and loving his siblings. This is reverse kick the dog. When an author wants a villain to be villainous, to be the worst scum alive, so that when he fails you cheer and applaud, they have him do something low and unnecessarily cruel towards someone or something defenseless and weak. In reverse, if you want to make the hero seem heroic, you have him put others first, to go without and to make sacrifices. It's clear Felix frequently puts his siblings' interests before his own. He cares for others more than for himself. A classic and some would argue necessary trait for a hero to have. Felix meets up with his friends and they head to school. The friends are pure anime archetypes. The kooky gamer nerd, the guy who's kind of a jerk but gets away with it because nothing he says is exactly wrong. It's more how he says it that's the problem. The brooding, mysterious one, silent and withdrawn. These guys are so typical they could have been a three-man tag team in rival schools. Once again, Liam and Odie are showing how well they know the conventions of anime and manga, how well they understand the beats and style of the diverse, widespread and world-loved medium. As the boys head to school, the whole story shifts tone, reverting back to the kind of world where a leonine, glowing monster might crush a teenager with a garbage bin. Vast, monstrous bird creatures are abducting people none too gently and stealing them high above the city, depositing them onto some kind of floating Terran platform. The people are bloody, bruised and wounded. There are dozens of them and they are surrounded by what look like faceless robots, humanoids that move in on them with malicious intent. It's a confronting cliffhanger. Readers of American comics might be used to seeing Batman get hit with such force that he flies across the room and smashes against a wall, and then a moment later stand up, for the purpose of the story, all but unharmed. He holds his rib and groans like it hurts, but he'll be dodging bullets on the next page. To see very real people in modern clothes and realistic proportions be gouged, torn, bloodied and mangled by these monstrous birds is confronting, and it snaps you out of the almost idyllic high school setup that was built up in front of you. This visceral visual, this mystery and horror is the cliffhanger for Chapter 1. It was 24 pages, roughly the size of a standard floppy at your local comic book shop. On its own, amazing artwork aside, this would be a hard sell as a single issue because it's just all world building. Keep in mind the book was written as 200 pages and Liam knew he had room to flex like this to build up character and investment from the reader. In his armour, Felix doesn't appear as Xenotype until around about page 117. Like a good superhero origin movie, Liam builds the world, allies, enemies and investment you have in the characters before the big payoff. He is hitting American superhero origin beats while simultaneously making it fit the conventions of anime and manga, conventions so plain and established that even I can see them. The next chapter picks up with the same gruesome energy the last one ended on. The abducted people are attacked by humanoids who mutate and consume and mangle the civilians, transforming into Xenoid-like monsters. The Guyver influence has been noted by readers, critics and the creators, and the survivors of this attack are herded into a bizarre organic maze by a beautiful pink-haired girl who is revealed to be more than human herself. She is in league with the monsters, and we learn a little something about their hierarchy and structure. There is so much unsaid here in a very typical manga style. A typical Japanese comic will wax lyrical about the character's new fighting technique for 8 pages, but then gloss over a whole bunch of bookkeeping stuff and expect you to either be patient until it's revealed, or fill in the gaps yourself with assumptions. Liam does the same here. We get hints at this demon world and the way and reasons it operates. We are given plot points, hooks, story elements and obstacles that is clearly setting up big, long-form storytelling plans. The girl has been travelling to the city, which is illegal and punishable by death. She fears for her life and a position within the organisation. Liam manages to make her sympathetic, even though just pages ago she was complicit in the gruesome, painful deaths of dozens of regular people. Her story is woven throughout the whole 200 pages of Xenotype. More is revealed at the end of the book, linking elements in Chapter 2 with those in Chapter 8. By the end of the book, Felix overcomes the immediate threat but is left clueless to the larger, more organised, resourced and sinister threats he is now in the crosshairs of. This kind of raising of the stakes is 100% necessary for any long-form story to succeed. It's why Dragon Ball Z fell apart for me after Namek. It didn't sit right that a couple of androids made on Earth were a bigger threat than Frieza. How are the guys who beat Frieza going to job to some man-made machines? The threats waiting for Felix in Xenotype Book 2 are larger, more powerful, and more numerous. This is a cross-cultural story convention, not something uniquely Japanese or Western. At school, the boys talk tactics. Axel, the brooding member of the group, is a teen boxer who has a big match coming up. The boys discuss technique. The Japanese have an unusual way of talking about combat and violence, where they classify everything into techniques and sets and moves and styles. They frequently name characters' attacks, and the whole thing is a kind of rock-paper-scissors affair. You can have a character being completely dominated in a fight, but then, mid-punch, they unlock some next level of potential or reach some kind of metaphysical milestone within their own heart and mind and ascend to a new form or new understanding, and the attacks which were nearly killing them on the last page don't even make them flinch on the current one. It's a strange way of thinking about something as sloppy and heated as a real fight, and it stems, I imagine, from karate and other martial arts where sets of moves and katas and the kung fu conceit of crane and monkey and dragon styles exist. In contrast to that, Liam, via Axel, tells the boys that fighting isn't like their anime and comic books. It's not rock, paper, scissors. It's not that simple. The boys encounter Robin, the typical anime pretty girl who actually has more going on for her than it first seems. She is bereaved because her boyfriend Tanner has gone missing. Yeah, the same Tanner from the start of the book. It's a simple connection, maybe even expected, and it brings the book back full circle. The drab uniforms, the strange, junky architecture, the underlying oppressive feeling of the city. You get the notion that something is wrong here, something is false with this world, even before you know it for sure. Felix narrates poetically about it. He feels it keenly, the barely contained horror of this mundane world. It's palpable, it sits heavy on the page. I said this book left me speechless. That's because I felt like I needed a nap when I was done. I read it in one sitting and I felt like I'd marathoned the uncut versions of Lord of the Rings. This book is dense, it's heavy. It has complexities, but it's not complex. It's a straightforward coming-of-age, coming-into-power story, but layered with graphic violence, heavy themes, and feelings that teenagers should never have to deal with. It brings up the same feelings of discomfort that Neon Genesis Evangelion did when it made soldiers and fighters of children. Despite how anime sexualizes them and shoulders them with responsibility and power, these guys are all still kids. Naruto is a child, Shinji was a child, Felix and Axel are children, and the hell they go through in this book, the Gantz-like violence and the body horror, is something no one should have to endure. Liam puts his characters through the ringer, and it's an ordeal for the reader as well. I wonder how Liam felt when writing it, if he's able to detach himself from the weight of the too real violence and just create, or if he uses that dread to spur his narrative. You connect with the characters, their pain and struggle is real, plain to see. They have big feelings and big emotions and big reactions to the madness that rapidly unfolds before them. Robin spies the killer lurking in the schoolyard, and Axel, the boxer, descends outdoors to fight him. This scene, Axel shucking off his jacket dramatically, ignoring the dangers of being kicked off the boxing team if he's caught fighting outside the ring again, speaks to the motivation of the character. Remember, these are 16 to 17-year-old people, not children, but certainly not adults either. Axel's intent to fight a naked, hugely muscled, alleged murderer in broad daylight instead of calling the police is baffling when viewed through the lens of our world. Why would a young man choose to fight a killer of his classmate that is built like a pro wrestler? For Axel, when asked, his response is simple. Our job is to protect the girl. His focus, the clarity and purity of his goal, protect those weaker than you, and the determination with which he attempts to carry it out is powerful, and really elevates this character to fan-favourite status. It's a confusing beat, because Axel is the one with the heroic qualities, not just because he's the most capable, but because he has superhero-like desire to do the right thing, even at great risk to his own safety and life. Modern Marvel heroes could learn a lot by reading some of Axel's dialogue. From the point Axel squares off with the killer until the time the killer undergoes a transformation into his demonic form, there is a 30-page fight scene that spans 2 chapters of the book. This is a fight manga, have no doubt, and Liam and Odie have invested a lot of page real estate into these battles. In fact, besides some interludes with the pink-haired girl and her new master, and some back and forth between Felix and Robin, almost the entirety of the rest of the book, 135 pages, is comprised of some sort of fight or battle. It's a huge, overwhelming narrative. It's impressive, it's bloated, it's unwieldy, and it leaves you as exhausted as the poor bastards who are fighting on the pages. At some point you just want it to be over. You want a resolution, because all the characters have suffered enough. Axel has the upper hand for some time, and after it gets bored of toying with him, the demon transforms and begins to torture the 2 boys. Felix bravely and foolishly tries to distract the demon to give Axel an advantage and time to recover. The next 20 pages consist of the demon, Balvor, trying to kill Robin because she is a witness to his existence, while Felix and Axel try to get her away and distract the demon. Protect the girl, Axel said 50 pages ago, and he's still singularly trying to do just that. When Axel is too wounded to stand, it's Felix who shoulders his burden, as ill-equipped to fight as he is. Does that make Felix more or less of a hero? Is he more heroic for charging into a situation knowing he will die, just for the chance to help his friends, or does it make him foolish, dying senselessly? In true manga body horror fashion, Felix is eviscerated, his torso split open, his hamburger bloody raw and covered in blood. As he lays dying, he laments that ultimately he made no difference. His regret is not dying, but being too weak to protect his friends before he dies. It took 108 pages, but finally getting to the main event, the reason we all backed the book. There have been parallels to Guyver invoked by pretty much everybody who has commented on this book, and while the origins of Felix's power and the themes of the book vary greatly from Guyver, there are visual similarities. Dying, Felix's mind retreats into his subconscious, where he is addressed by mysterious voices. They tell him he must choose to fight back, he must choose to go on living. This transformation scene is powerful, well written and evocative. Felix, naked and slowly disassembling piece by piece as he drifts ever closer to death, makes his choice. The dialogue here is classic manga shonen, the power of friendship and the will to fight for others. That sort of thing is rarely touched on in American superhero comics. More often it's Spider-Man fighting because he has a responsibility to, Batman fighting to protect his city, Superman fighting to protect his adopted planet. There is a selflessness to American heroes, but a kind of anonymity as well. They fight, mostly for people they don't know. In this kind of manga, characters more often fight for close friends and family. It's a little more selfish, but infinitely more personable, and it makes for moving character motivation. In his dream state, his deathly trance, Felix chooses. He chooses the power to protect his friends, the strength to fight monsters, the speed to save lives. He chooses to become a hero. With those words, a Xenotype armor forms around him and we get a gorgeous, powerful splash page reveal. Chapter 5 ends with Balvor charging at Felix as their real fight begins. At this point there are 66 pages of story left in the book. Of those, 44 of them is taken up by the fight between Balvor and Felix. This battle is a primer for the wide range of Felix's powers, but it also showcases that even with his incredible power, he has little experience fighting and can't utilise his abilities. Without his friends helping him, talking him through the fight and distracting Balvor, he probably wouldn't have won. The fight is taxing and difficult. Felix endures incredible damage and demonstrates a superhuman regeneration ability, even as far as regrowing limbs. The final chapter of the book is more like an extended epilogue, a chance for explanation, closure, and the nurturing of plot seeds planted earlier in the book. It adds new chapters of narrative complexity, more factions and enemies and obstacles, and makes it clear the Xenotype story is significant in scale, vast and far from over. Axel refuses to believe that Felix didn't know about the power he wielded before today, and leaves as less than a friend. Felix returns to class like nothing happened, and a range of factions, agencies and demonic organisations are aware of Felix and are actively targeting him now. Classic end of the episode anime setups lifted, I think, by the Japanese from American comic books. So what worked, what didn't? So much of the book landed where it was aimed. The one-liners and the humour from the three characters, Axel, Robin and Felix, in the face of a heroic and monstrous foe elicited genuine laughter. Robin cracking wise about driving without a licence as she ploughs a truck into the wounded Balvor to give Felix time to generate a killing blow was a mad moment of bleak humour, gallows humour. None of the three figured they would live through the experience, all of them willing to die to help any of the others escape. Powerful bonds were formed between them within a short period of time, bonds that will endure beyond this volume and into the next. I concede there are choices made in this book that I don't yet understand. Maybe they are manga conventions that I'm unaware of, cultural cues that sit different to superhero comics. I'm not sure why the story was set on another world, with humanoid inhabitants that resemble mankind so closely. They use the word Orman instead of human, but they talk about the drug PCP as a potential cause for Balvor's superhuman strength. They use phrases like kick your ass and playing possum, and they reference Wheel of Fortune-like game shows with board game giveaways. These things are distinctly Earth concepts. How and why would they have developed on a distant alien planet inhabited by beings that aren't really human despite, according to the glossary, sharing 98% of DNA with us? I don't know if this is intentional and the reason Ormans are so similar to humans will be revealed in the future, or if it's a sort of effect we see when people write historical fiction and use anachronistic language. Yeah, it could be a kind of translation equivalent. Maybe they have a concept similar to playing possum and this translation is the closest we can get. But if you're using that excuse, why have the characters be alien at all? Why not just set it on Earth? Even an alternate Earth with different countries and different city names. I cheered for the humans in Avatar. The Na'vi were the bad guys as far as I'm concerned. You make your entire cast aliens, even human-looking aliens, and I care about them a lot less. If this whole Orman versus human thing is a plot point down the line, I think it was a mistake to not hint at it more explicitly in Volume 1. The book is 200 pages long. Some stuff should definitely be left a mystery to bring us back for Book 2, but I can't help but wonder if we needed all 200 of these pages. There's a lot of fight in here, a lot of back and forward, a lot of give and take. It's well drawn, well scripted, and incredibly impactful, but there's just so much of it. You really get to a point where you just want it to be over. You want a resolution and an explanation, and we get so little of that in this book. Why is Felix able to dodge bullets even before he gains his powers? Where do his powers come from? He got them at death's door. Is that something everyone has access to under the right circumstances? If not, why? Why is he special? Wanting to know this sort of stuff is the kind of hook that brings people back for a second volume. But when you operate like that, deep in mystery and implied meaning, like a lot of manga and anime does, you need to make sure the answers you have are eventually revealed and made clear and do satisfy the reader. If they don't, if not enough progress is made, even one answer revealed and 2 new questions asked, the audience might not be back for a third book, even for 200 more pages of Odie's excellent art. This volume promises a lot and delivers on most of it. What it delivers in spades, maybe even too much of it. Like a 4-hour movie that you just want to end so the character's suffering ends. I only ever watched one Saw movie, one was enough. Xenotype is an emotional roller coaster, a hyper-violent spectacle, one that leaves you dazed, confused and drained. It leaves you strangely empty because questions have been asked that haven't yet been answered, and the fight, though fought to a victory, was so difficult, so long and so horrific that there was no joy to the victory, only relief that it came at all. Again, I'd reference the bleakness of Gantz. It's in full effect here. Felix's victory is a hollow one. He lives, forever changed. Robin lives, but is traumatized by what she lived through, and Axel lives, but he is broken, his body covered in massive cuts, gouges and scars. The trio less won a fight than they survived it, and not without their own traumas. This gives Liam a lot of conflict and story to delve into, a lot of opportunity to build character arcs and answer those questions we're asking. More so than his online persona, more so than Odie's impressive art, more so than any design or desire to save comics, his writing on this book from this point on is what will dictate the continued success or untimely failure of this vast new IP.